Hi, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Catherine. I am joined today by journalist, author, and advocate Gretchen Carlson. Gretchen, thank you so much for talking with me. It's so nice to see you.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Oh, I know you're really busy, and I know you're very excited to come to Phoenix this week, actually tomorrow, to accept the Sandra Day OConnor Award from the Arizona Foundation for Women for your dedication to work that benefits women and families. Congratulations.
So we actually put together a wonderful program that's all going to be on tape, but people can still go and register for it at the website and they can see the entire thing. But such an honor for me to get this award.
Well, yes. What does it mean to you personally? Because I know you receive awards all the time, but for something like this, for something that you've been advocating for many, many years, what does that mean to you personally?
Well, it means a lot because I feel like I have these connections to Sandra Day OConnor, Justice Sandra Day OConnor. First of all, we both went to Stanford, and so we have this educational, parallel. And then I did want to actually be a lawyer, so that was the first thing on my docket, so to speak, before I got into television. She obviously used her skills to become a chief justice, or not chief justice, but a justice on the Supreme Court. And then just she was a trailblazer for women, and I have fallen into this path, doing television for more than 25 years and still doing that, but at the same time, never expecting to be one of the poster children for harassment in the workplace, but, really have taken it upon myself to try and make the workplace safer for women. So following in her footsteps.
Well, part of this virtual event includes you having a conversation about everything that is going on and what you've been able to achieve, especially in the last several years. You became a prominent voice against workplace harassment after your historic harassment complaint in 2016 against Fox News chairman Roger Ailes. What was the trigger that made you say, enough is enough, this is not right, I have to do something?
Well, as you know, that was almost 4 years ago now, and women were treated much differently than they even are today because we've made so much progress. But the number one thing my lawyer said to me is you need to be prepared to know that they're going to try to ruin you and they'll malign you and they'll dig up everything about you, true or not. So I was ready for that, unfortunately. But for me to decide to jump off the cliff by myself a full 15 months before the Me Too movement exploded was that when I realized a career that I had killed myself for to get to the national stage, that was being taken away from me and it wasn't my choice. I decided that if I don't stand up and say this, who will? And I have 2 teenage children and I did it for them, a boy and a girl. And now all the work that I'm doing is really to improve it for all young people so that they don't have to face this in the workplace.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the Me Too movement because you did help pave the way for that. You really helped create awareness and you gave women the courage to speak out. What change do you think still needs to happen to achieve gender equality?
Wow, a lot. But all these issues are really intertwined. Pay equity, promotions for women, harassment, discrimination, they're all sort of intertwined. And it really starts with the leadership at the top of organizations. So we need more women to be in those positions and we need men to be educated on this issue, first and foremost. But listen, we've come a long way. And through all my advocacy work of trying to change laws as well, I formed my new nonprofit, liftourvoices.org, in December to eradicate non-disclosure agreements. That's one of the biggest ways in which we keep this problem perpetually in our workplaces is because we allow the silence to continue. If we can eradicate non-disclosures and now allow women to tell their stories and have a voice, that's how we actually make change, is when we start talking about it. And we were really on a fantastic run with this new organization until the pandemic, because we got that question on the debate stage. When you saw Elizabeth Warren and Mike Bloomberg, gosh, they were talking about NDAs and my kids were at home and they were like cheering up and down in the kitchen. They're like, Mom, they're asking your question. And so that was really a pivotal moment where we got every presidential candidate to sign onto our petition except for just a couple. And so our work continues. We have to get rid of these silencing mechanisms. And so we continue our fight.
We do indeed. And you write in your book, Be Fierce, Stop Harassment, and Take Your Power Back, which I read. Just wonderful, wonderful read. You wrote about all of the women really across the world who have shared their stories with you. For the women who still feel like they don't have a voice or they won't be believed, where can they find that encouragement and that help and that assistance and that resource that they need?
Yeah, it's such a great question. It's why I put together the Gretchen Carlson Leadership Initiative. I was actually in Phoenix for that about a year and a half ago. So we set up these workshops for women all across the country where they could come for free if they didn't have the resources to meet with lawyers and to feel emboldened, really, to be able to stand up and be courageous. I speak to women every single day on my website, GretchenCarlson.com. I mean, it's sad to say that there are still so many stories out there. But my biggest piece of advice, other than reading my book, which is actually a playbook for all of this, is that if there was ever a time in history where you would be believed and where people would take your claims seriously, it's now. We're in this movement. I don't think it's going to go away. We're seeing another movement happen right now in society. They're very much interlinked with the idea of how empowered people are about speaking up right now. So I just encourage women to tell their stories and to go to the media, because the media actually cares about covering these stories now.
Absolutely. And, one of the things I find most inspiring about these movements is that we are seeing the voice of young people rise, and they're not afraid to speak out. You have a teenage daughter, as you mentioned. What is the one thing that you instill in her that you would want to instill in other young girls and women based on your own experience?
To take risks. We socialize girls to stay within the lines, color inside the lines, be perfect, be really, really nice. I mean, listen, my biggest piece of advice to young women is to stop being so damn nice, and not in a bad way, but just like boys are. Listen, boys go for promotions at work when they're about 10% sure that they can actually do the next job. Women wait until they're 90% sure they can actually do the next job. We've got to get girls out there socialized to be risk takers and to say, I can do this and I'm just going to try. The biggest other piece of advice that I give to young women is go sit in the front row of every classroom and every boardroom and every meeting at work and raise your hand. We've all had that feeling of when your heart is beating so fast because you're nervous to ask the question, but once you do that 1 or 2 times and realize that you came out okay on the other side, you do it more in your life. And it's just my hope that we will start to encourage girls to be as upfront as we do boys.
And you mentioned boys and you mentioned men and their role in this conversation that we're having and the movement. What would you like to see more of from boys and men?
Wow, that could be a whole nother separate book, but it's the biggest lesson that I've learned from my movement and this whole movement that we're in our society is that men are the biggest part of this equation. We need them. And it starts with the way in which we raise our boys. I also have a teenage son, and actually I feel like it's more important that I teach him these lessons about respecting women than actually the empowerment that I give to my daughter, because a lot of focus has gone into empowering young women, but it's the young boys who are going to go up into the world and probably be, for the foreseeable future, the woman's boss. And we hope that changes too, but in the meantime, we've got to educate these young boys to respect women and to stop this, to eradicate the idea that it's okay to harass women and not pay them fairly. So getting to our boys is crucial. And then getting to men who are already in the workplace as leaders to let them hear our stories and to be the kind of leader that we need to understand these issues. The dynamic can change completely in the workforce when the leader says, the buck stops with me and I am not allowing this here. And I encourage women to come forward. Imagine. I mean, that just changes the whole dynamic. So there's so much work to do, but I reach out to men every single day because they are a huge part of solving this.
Well, I know last year at the Arizona Foundation Women for Women event, which was obviously much different than it's going to be this year, but there was a concerted effort to recognize the men who have played a role in helping women move forward. And don't you think that that's equally important, is to acknowledge the men who are helping to make a difference?
100%. It's why I devoted a whole chapter to men in my book, Be Fierce, because I didn't even realize how important that was until I started researching the book and just getting more and more into my work. And I realized that these men that were making a huge difference for women, they had commonalities. It was really fascinating. And as I started to interview a lot of them for the book, by like the 5th guy, I was like, okay, now wait a minute. I'm just waiting for you. You're going to tell me you had a strong mom. And without a doubt, that was the one factor that all of these men had, is that they had a strong mom who advocated for herself in the family, who either worked inside or outside of the home, but was independent and strong. And that transferred on to the son and the way in which he looked at women in the world. So that's what I'm trying to do with my son. And that's what I encourage, all women to try and do with theirs as well.
Well, I have a teenage son too, a 17-year-old, and that's what I try to show him and instill in him as well. And it's a conversation that obviously needs to continue. In 2017, you were named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. Who do you find most influential that other people can look to for inspiration and empowerment besides yourself?
Any woman who runs a country. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that in our country yet, because I really believe seeing is believing. For our young women and young girls to not see an American woman as president yet, that makes it more difficult for them to think that they can achieve that. So I look at all the women across the world who have been able to do that. They've had 2 female prime ministers in Great Britain. You have an amazing female leader, obviously, in Germany. You have an amazing prime minister in New Zealand. You had Benazir Bhutto in Pakistan when I was coming up in the news business. And these were women that I looked to because I was covering politics on a daily basis. And they are my heroes. And actually, when you look at those women and how they have handled the pandemic, they have a really, really great track record. So there's something to be said about the way women lead, which is different from men. And in some cases might actually be better.
Absolutely. So what's next for you? Do you plan to write another book?
You know what? Not right now. My husband always jokes with me. He's like, how can you be more busy right now than you were when you were doing a live TV show every single day? That's because I'm still doing TV projects. I'm about to announce some other big media ventures coming up in the next few months. And at the same time, I'm doing Lift Our Voices, my new organization, and then all my other advocacy work and raising 2 teenage kids. So it's a lot on my plate, but I think it's really important that I still do my craft of television, because I want to be a beacon of hope for all the other women out there who have not been able to return to their jobs simply for having the courage to come forward. And unfortunately, it's about 99% of women who come forward, have done nothing wrong, and then they're blackballed from their industries for forever. Another thing I'm working on to try to change.
Well, you are making a change, that is for sure. I do want to remind everyone they can watch you receive your award and listen to you speak at the Arizona Foundation for Women virtual awards event. It is this Thursday, tomorrow, June 11th at 5:15 p.m. You must be registered to participate, so go to azfw.org. Gretchen Carlson, congratulations on your award, for everything that you continue to do on behalf of women. Thank you very much for the change that you are helping us make.
Thank you so much for having me, Catherine. Great talking with you.
Great talking with you too. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching Conversations with Catherine. Please remember to hit the subscribe button, like, and comment while you're here. I'll see you next time.